Good evening, dear friends. This is Saturday, November the 5th, in the year 2016, and we're in the Pine Gate Meditation Hall in Ottawa, Canada. This evening I'm going to talk about a mature teaching from the Buddha. This is the Sutra on the Full Awareness of Breathing. And those words are very carefully chosen by the Buddha. If we can only be aware of our breath, we transform this life-giving system, breathing in and breathing out, into an instrument of transformation. So this is a very important sutra in the Buddhist lexicon. And the Buddha didn't offer it early on in his ministry. And then one rainy season retreat, he looked out and he saw all the senior monks teaching groups of 20, 30 young monks. And he thought, yes, the Sangha is mature. They're now ready for this. And he'd been prompted by his faithful attendant, Ananda. Ananda had asked him, is there a teaching that brings all the components of Buddhism together? And he said, yes, there is. And I will give it at the end of this rainy season retreat. So he decided that he would continue in the East Park of Savatthi for a further month after his retreat was over. And this enabled monks from all over northern India to come and hear this particular teaching, which was to bring everything together in Buddhism. And I have to flip these back a little bit. Hello, Cal. Come on in. As you can see, we have a lot to go through. What the Buddha provided were 16 exercises with the breath. And this was to investigate 4 domains: the body, our feelings and emotions, our mind, the mental formations we hold, and our objects of mind, which are perceptions. And body, feelings and emotion, mind and objects of mind all interconnect. So if you're working with one, you're working with all of them. You may remember from a talk I gave some time ago on living dharma that we have to update the Buddha's teachings so that they're relevant to the circumstances of our time without losing the essence of the teaching. I wrote a commentary about this sutra because I was very, very impressed by it, but I felt there was just something, for me at least, there's something that was missing. So I looked at all the Theravadan texts, the Tibetan texts, and the Chinese texts, and then I found what I was looking for. Because the usual way it's mentioned is breathing in and out, I'm aware. And I thought there had to be some direction to the practitioner. And in the Chinese text, I found the idea of skillfulness. Skillfully breathing in and out. And then in one of the translations from the Tibetan, there was the idea of training myself. So I put these 2 things together. So I started off each one of these 16 concentrations with the words skillfully training myself, so that we really get the idea that this is a way of training in order to produce transformation. So there's a few things to lay down as foundations before we can really dive into this. We often think that our logic and our intellect can help us resolve the suffering that we're going through. And those who have used logic and intellect to solve your suffering, you know it doesn't work. There has to be something else. We have to produce an energy of transformation. And the three main aspects of producing transformation are mindfulness, concentration, and insight. Because intellectual notions don't help us transform. So what we have to do is operate in such a way that mindfulness, concentration, and insight emerges as a sort of a flower from the soil that's been carefully tilled. And what we're trying to develop are the 7 factors of awakening. And this is really very, very important for this particular sutra. The first aspect is that we pay full attention to our breath. Now just think about it. On an everyday basis, do you think about your breath coming in, coming out? No, we're not aware of our breath. So we're losing out on a very, very valuable instrument. That if we have full attention, you are observing the in-breath, observing the out-breath. It has your full attention. And suddenly, this life-breathing instrument has become a major transformation vehicle, as you will see. But the full attention is absolutely crucial. And when our attention to breath starts to expand, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a training. That's why skillfully training myself to have full attention. It's going to take time, it's going to take effort, it's going to take direction. But when we are starting to move into full attention, we can then investigate what is making us suffer. We need perseverance, diligence, concentration, and then we start to understand the components that have created such suffering for ourselves. Then we come to a state of equanimity. But rather than go through all of these other factors of awakening, I just want to bring your attention to full attention. If we can proceed with full attention, we've got a different motor. We have a motor that can get through our suffering. So, with this particular sutra, we'll just do with the first 4. Skillfully training myself, breathing in and out, I'm aware of a long breath. Skillfully training myself, breathing in and out, I'm aware of a short breath. Now these two, you're just bringing awareness to your breath for the first time ever. And the breath's going, oh wow! He, she has found out that I'm alive and I can do all kinds of stuff. And when we are putting our attention on in-breath and out-breath, we are in just the first 2 being aware of the nature of our breath, whether it's long or short, smooth or ragged. We're aware. It's got our attention. That restores the body's capacity for self-healing. When we talk about the third one, skillfully training myself, breathing in and out, aware of my whole body. How often are we aware? Take an in-breath. Breathing in. Whoa! The whole body. It's a tingle. It really is a tingle. If it's the first time, it's a big tingle. And the fourth one, skillfully training myself, breathing in and out. I'm aware that I'm calming my whole body. All this is possible with your full attention on breath. I can't emphasize that enough. And this particular quatrain, there's 4 quatrains, 4 segments of 4. And this one on the body, this is used to establish the deep relaxation practice that Carolyn offered last time, whereby you use your breath in to focus on your eyes, and you send love to your eyes. Then you go all through your body, every organ, every bit of your body, with the full attention. And some people think deep relaxation is just where I snore and go to sleep. It's not. It's where you have full attention on every aspect of your body so that you can refresh it and heal it. Okay? So it's really important that the noticing of the breath is really, really important. Full, like the whole aspect of fully engaging with your breath. Now let me give you a very simple example. You've had a meeting with a good friend, and you're waiting for them to come, and looking at your watch. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Where the heck is that person? 20 minutes, you start to get steaming mad. 25 minutes, you're running all the old tapes in your mind. Ah, she's always late. He has no consideration for me. You know, the stuff that we do. If we're upset or delayed, or someone isn't prompt right to the second. But all you have to do when you're getting angrier and angrier at the person not coming up, all you have to do is check in on the body. Breathe into the body. Breathe out. How is the body? Body's okay, so you know it's your mind running trash and garbage. So you can just say, oh, my mind is running trash and garbage. But if you then, the other alternative is you check in on your body and you feel agitated, then you do walking meditation to calm. So when the person who you've been so mad at eventually turns up, you can say very sweetly, was traffic difficult tonight? Or something like that. And then you can enjoy a nice evening. But how many times have we done that sort of thing? Got steamed up, where we've got this instrument, the body and breath, as a kind of where we can check in. And we can find out, okay, the body is fine, so the mind is just fooling us, and the mind fools us most of the time. And what this set of 16 breathing exercises does for us, we don't allow the mind to mess us up. So just that full attention, if you can just hold on to that one, full attention on breathing. And it's great to do it on a bus and be surprised why everyone else who's on their smartphones aren't doing it as well with you. But you know, I've often wondered on a bus to stand up and say, hey people, this is what you can do, but I think I'd be locked up for that. So that's the first bit. I know, but the simple example I gave you is how you can check in to your body and really know the truth of what's going on. and realize that your mind is going to throw up garbage if you allow it. And you can just check in, breathing out. My body's cool. So my mind and my thoughts are imposters. Or in, out. Yeah, I'm feeling uneasy. I'm feeling agitated. I'll do some walking meditation. I'll walk this meditation out of my system, again with breath. So just this first 4, we see how valuable this is. Now we start to go a little bit deeper. Now the second, again, we're skillfully training ourselves, and we become aware of experiencing joy on the in-breath and the out-breath. Number 6, we are skillfully training ourselves to be aware of experiencing happiness. What 5 and 6 are doing is to cultivate a kind of steadiness. Because it's not joy and happiness you're after. What you're after is some mental formation that is messing you up, upsetting you, hurting you, damaging you. So you cultivate steadiness by breathing in, skillfully training myself. I'm aware of experiencing joy. I'm remembering my last birthday that went on for 3 months. You know, you're just remembering something joy, and it changes you. Then skillfully training myself, breathing in and out. I'm aware of experiencing happiness. And you remember some happiness, something foolish with a child or a friend. And it's as though you've built yourself up so you can be aware of other mental formations. You become aware, skillfully training myself. I'm aware of my hatred for my boss. Okay? And number 8, skillfully training myself, breathing in and out, I'm aware of how to calm that hatred for my boss. And I have to tell you, it works. Because what you've done, you've established a good platform. So you can really look at this one mental formation that is upsetting you and making you unclear, and finally you calm that mental formation. Because we have to realize that we're far more than one painful feeling. We tend not to think so at the time. We think that that's the only thing going. And this is so for our young people, where they are taken down so far by one emotional, painful feeling. They feel their life is wretched. Many will move into suicide, particularly through the phenomenon of cyberbullying, which has only been here for 20 years. It's a kind of a recent thing to deal with. And we can start using this teaching to deal with youth suicide. And I've talked in schools about cyberbullying and how children can use their breath to balance and not be taken down. I'm thinking of one particular incident a number of years ago. A friend of mine who was one of my students here, he moved away because of his job, and his son had been bullied, both physically and through cyberbullying, and this young teenager had tried to commit suicide. So his dad called me in great alarm, and I listened to him. And I said, well, why don't you just send your son so he can be with us for a while? And I said, well, put him on the phone. So I talked to him. I didn't mention the word suicide or bullying. I talked to him about the camping and kayaking trips we'd gone. You know, joy, happiness. He went, yeah, from the other end. But it was getting through. And I said, well, why don't you come and stay with Carolyn and I for a little while? And he said, yeah. So he came, and we picked him up at the airport. Carolyn fed him with mounds of food. He managed to empty the fridge twice a day, and he slept in, and when he would get up late, I knew what his passion was. He was very much into technology and things like this. Unfortunately, I knew a number of curators at the Aeronautical Museum and the Science Museum, and I got them as a favor to me to give him a tour. And he loved this. And he also loved the special attention that he was getting. Happiness, joy was being cultivated. And after one of these expeditions, he'd come back and he was full of joy and happiness. I asked him to tell me what's going on. I didn't ask him, what's all this about suicide? I said, just what's going on? And he told me that there were 3 boys at his school that were bullying him, and he also thought that they were shaming him through smartphones and social media. And I asked him the name of his principal, which was out in BC, and I called her. I lifted up the phone, talked to her. She was aware of the situation and had already taken steps. So the principal had taken certain steps, keeping 2 of the boys in recess in detention. So there was only 1 out in the playground. And she said, we're doing everything we can. We're aware of this boy's situation. And I said, very good. Put the phone down. And this little boy said, I don't believe you did that. I said, well, I remember you also telling me about your mum and dad really didn't listen to what you had to say. He said, yeah. Next phone call was to the mum and dad. And especially the dad first, because I had taught him about deep listening. And I said, do you think you could carry this practice on with your son? Because it's really, really vital that he's heard. And he said, yes. And he said, my wife will also do this. Because they were separated, but they're both concerned about this little boy. So I put the phone down, and this kid was just beaming. And I said, well, we have to find out the emotions and feelings that took you down. Can you identify them? Well, what did you actually feel when you were contemplating suicide? Can you recall that? And he did. And he wrote 3 emotions down. And I said, well, what about the rest of your emotions that you've experienced in your short life? Can you write those down? He said, yes. And he wrote down about 30. And I said, well, 3? 30? He said, yes, it is absurd. He'd allowed 3 emotions to take him down, and he had hundreds of other emotions. It's just a question of how you're going to move from the 3 to the hundreds. And the other thing that he liked to do was farting contests. Carolyn would not comply. But I did, and I lost every time. So he was very proud that he could best me in that particular category. But it was just very interesting in finding that, the 3 emotions that took him down, they were kind of heavy emotions, but just realize that this is what young people go through. 1 or 2 emotions are going to crash them. So if they can be made aware of, okay, use your breath in and out, skillfully train yourself so that you feel joy, feel happiness, then you can deal with that ugly emotion that's taking you down. So this was quite an experiment, and I learned a lot from it. I don't think it's a recipe or for how one should always proceed. This little boy had some openness to Buddhism through his dad and through me, so he could accept these sorts of things. But it does make me realize that schools need practices. They need methods. And one method I had used for this boy, and I have used in schools in Ottawa, I talked to the kids about cyberbullying, and I'm saying, you don't have to say anything, I know it happens, and they're all nodding. And when I first started to investigate cyberbullying, I was appalled, because I was ignorant. I had no idea of the extent of it. So I said, well, when you get these cyberbullying things that really, really hurt you, think of a tall tree in a wind. And the wind is a gale force wind. And the branches at the top of the tree are swaying, some branches are breaking off. But when you look further down, the trunk of the tree is steady. Now what I want you to do, every time something comes up that's like that hurricane in the top of a tree, put your hands on your tummy. Breathe in to your hands. Breathe out. Breathe right down into your tummy. Do that 10 times. And you'll see that the anxiety and the hurt diminishes just from that. And I said, you're starting to get them beat. What I would like to do if I was all powerful, I would ban smartphones at all schools. But I don't have that power. So we see here that there is the development, establishing a sense of joy, establishing a sense of happiness, and using our breath intelligently to bring that up. Then we can deal with a nasty formation. Then we can calm that nasty formation. Okay? So the first 2 quatrains, 1 to 4 and 5 to 8, they're setting the stage for the real hard work. This is like the preliminary steps. It now starts to get a little bit harder. And here we need to understand consciousness, store, mind and manas. I talked about this last time, but at the end of the Dharma talk, if you want me to go over that again, I will. But for the moment, there's not really time. Now we're going to look at the mind. What goes on in the mind? The mental formations. Again, training myself skillfully. I breathe in and I'm aware of the mental formations in my mind. Okay? We're getting it to another level. And here, in 10, you're doing the same thing, but you're being aware of your mind, but you are gladdening your mind. You're making your mind joyful before you concentrate your mind on the specific mental formation that's damaging you. Then you liberate your mind by cutting off the nutriments that are feeding it. Let me go over this fairly carefully, because this is important. The first thing we have to acknowledge is that we love our dramas. We're all drama queens and drama kings of different kinds, and we love our dramas. And that means you've got so many out-of-control attachments that are going to hammer you. So, but if you can catch the link in the causal chain, those dramas, you can do an end run around them. We've got to go deeper and cut out a lot of unnecessary thinking, mostly because we've established stability from the first 4 exercises and 5 and 6, and we can see how our feelings actually condition the mind. And we're getting onto the idea of going deeper into the mind. So I'll read them out as I've got them here. Skillfully, this is number 9, skillfully training myself, breathing in and breathing out, aware of my mental formations. That means you're getting smarter. You can identify and name the mental formation. Number 10, skillfully training myself, breathing in and breathing out, aware of gladdening my mental formations. Number 11, skillfully training myself, breathing in and breathing out, aware of concentrating on the nutriments that feed my damaging mental formations. Let me say that again. The 11th one, aware of concentrating on the nutriments that feed my damaging mental formations. Then number 12, skillfully training myself, breathing in and breathing out, aware of liberating my mind by not feeding the damaging mental formations. It's like a surgical precision in this quatrain, and I find the Buddha absolutely brilliant. You know, he's not wasting words; he's giving the surgical precision. So let's go through this carefully. Now, in the 9th breathing exercise, we use our breath. Again, by this time, we should be pretty good at the full attention. Okay. We're not dozing off halfway through. We're really using our breath with full attention. And that's the crucial part, that with full attention, we can make this work. So in exercise 9, we use our breath to recognize and then look deeply at the causes and conditions that create the damaging mental formations that arise in our mind. And we recognize that this is an energy that requires our tender, loving care. That's what exercise 10 does, gladdening the mind. And this is a wonderful exercise. We consciously provide the mind a nourishment to become stronger and to go further in the practice. So it's a self-nourishment that we're offering ourselves. And we're now deeply in the domain of the mind. Now, deep in our consciousness, way below our everyday awareness, there are many positive and wholesome seeds of potential just waiting for an opportunity to manifest. So we gladden the mind by taking conscious steps with our thoughts to bring up these wholesome seeds deep in our consciousness, like love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And that's a particular teaching that the Buddha gave, not to Buddhists, but to a Hindu Brahmin. About the Brahmin asked him, how can I be with Brahma, the ultimate God? And the Buddha gave him an exercise where he would focus on love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Then he would be with Brahma. And then the Buddha thought, that wasn't too bad. Maybe I'll tell it to my monks. But it was first of all given to a Hindu gentleman. So the self-nourishment is vital when you start to get into the domain of the mind, when you get in deep, because there's so much crap, garbage, nasty stuff down there. We all know that. So we gladden the mind by taking conscious steps with our thoughts and our intentions. So we water the seeds of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. On the Pine Gate Meditation CD, which many of you have, the 4 Brahma Viharas meditation is there. And that's something to do every day, so you just refresh yourself. And we also have to take smart, positive action to organize our everyday living, at home and at work. And if at work, if you've got a surrounding of toxic people, walk the other way, because you can't shoot them. So you might as well walk away, but don't engage. So you have to be really, really smart. And you have to be attentive, and this is where the fullness of your attention is so important. You don't water unwholesome seeds in yourself, such as despair, anger, jealousy, and greed. So what we're doing is rewriting the programs deep in our consciousness with full intentions and knowledge that we have the capacity to do this once we have achieved that full attention on breath. That's why this particular teaching by the Buddha is so important. And nothing survives in the mind unless it is fed. Love doesn't survive in the mind unless it's fed. Hatred in the mind doesn't survive unless it's fed. And that's the disturbing part of the US election right now, where hatred is fed, and fed quite callously. So in exercise 11, we concentrate the mind and investigate the nutriments that bring the unwholesome mental formation into your mind. What fed it? What got it there? And it's like burning the affliction away just by your awareness of what is feeding it. Is it the toxic gang around the water cooler? Is it watching too much of Donald Trump on TV? What's feeding the unwholesome aspects of your mind? And this is followed by exercise 12, where you liberate the mind by simply cutting off the nutriments. Which may mean, I'm not going near the water cooler at work. I've had it with Trump. I'm not watching anymore. Because even if you're totally opposed to him, if you're watching and listening to what he's doing, that's going to affect you in some way or another. So you cut off the nutriment. And concentration is the sword that cuts through the suffering that ties the mind into knots. We simply must stop feeding our demons. But before we can do that, we've got the whole sequential process of this exercise. That's why it's so brilliant. Everything feeds into everything else. And this quatrain in particular played a big part in my young friend's rehabilitation from suicide, attempted suicide. The focus on gladdening the mind was vital for him to eventually see that he can change the internal CDs that he dances to or listens to. I'd listened carefully to him to identify the nutriments that fed his impetus towards suicide, and then together we discussed the best way for him to eliminate them so he could stop feeding the nutriments that inflamed his damaging mental formations, which were 3 emotions that he could identify. When he knew that was the target, he did really good work. And I knew he'd got it. He'd emptied the fridge one day. I think he got up 3 times during the night just to feed his face. And he opened the fridge door and he started to laugh. He said, "Nothing survives without food." I thought, okay, kiddo, you've got it. You've got it. He'd really learned some very valuable tools from this sutra. Now we come to the cumulative object. We're now going to look at the objects of the mind, correcting our wrong perceptions and throwing them away. This is what it all leads to. This is the final steps into some level of awakening or enlightenment. And perceptions are singled out by the Buddha to demonstrate that the practice of mindful breathing, being skillfully aware, loaded with mindfulness, concentration and insight, this works and actually brings about transformation. So let's start with 13. Skillfully training myself, breathing in and breathing out, aware of contemplating impermanence. 14. Skillfully training myself, breathing in and breathing out, aware of contemplating, letting go of desire and craving. 15. Skillfully training myself, breathing in and breathing out, aware of contemplating nirvana. 16. Skillfully training myself, breathing in and breathing out, aware of contemplating cessation and throwing away all notions. There's a difference between a notion and an insight. You're going to throw away notions and you're going to operate with insight. So these final 4 exercises are what the whole sutra culminates in. They're there to assist us in seeing reality as it is, without the mud and distortions provided by our feelings and our mind. Exercise 13, perhaps the most significant one, is to at last understand impermanence, that everything changes, nothing stays the same. And with it, the nature of non-self and interbeing. So contemplating impermanence does in fact include the final 3 exercises also. And impermanence is a central platform, if you like, of the Buddha's teachings. It includes all concentrations, as it leads to the insight that all formations are of the nature to change, which is really a good idea, that all our mental formations are subject to change. So if we know what to do, we can change the unhealthy ones and maybe keep the healthy ones a little bit longer. So this exercise assists in an end run around a level of consciousness that we're often not aware of. This is the level of consciousness known as manas, which is a distorting, level of consciousness. What's running through my mind? Just think Trump, you got it. It's full of hate, it's full of divisiveness, it's full of every negativity that you can manage. And it's like a call center, sending these messages out all the time. And the only way you can change it is to change the programs in the store consciousness. And for those of you who weren't here last time when I talked about consciousness, I will talk about that a little bit more at the end of this talk. Now, letting go is also difficult, particularly in the realm of sexual desire. It's not easy. There's a constant energy to hook us to desire and the notions of permanence and attachment. Now, I call attachment by its true name. It's addiction. It's nothing other than addiction. It often feels like getting past a cocaine habit. And many of our attachments are of the same nature as a cocaine addiction. And this is the Darth Vader element of our minds. And it's difficult to resist. So we need steady retraining to let go of desire and craving. And that's why this particular sutra is cumulative. It's step by step. So the Buddha's teachings, which are done so carefully, it's as though he sculpted them with very fine tools. He's refreshing our memories, underlined by his many statements that under no circumstance permit your mind to attach to anything as me and mine. As long as you're doing that, you realize you've got work to do. So the next two exercises, 15 and 16, contemplate Nirvana and cessation, again skillfully training myself. I'm going to contemplate Nirvana and cessation. And respectively, when we're looking at Nirvana, heaven and all the rest of it, it means extinction of all notions and views that prevent us from being our true nature. And I would add something to this. All we seem to want is to get to heaven. La 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 la. Little flowers, tweeting, tweeting, tweeting. All nice. What bullshit. Heaven isn't out there. It's not particularly nice anyway. Heaven's right here and now, once we stand in our true, authentic nature. Once we have full attention on our breath so that we can transform our formations, then we're there. We don't have to wish for it or find some theology to support it. So the experience of reality as it is, this is the end point of the practice. We're just going to see and accept reality as it is within ourselves. And with exercise 16 we have a very interesting conundrum, a final drum roll. It's throwing away wrong perceptions and views, and throwing away the processes of getting caught, and throwing away the notions that fuel our fears, addictions, suffering, and perceptions. These are all notions. Impermanence, letting go, nirvana, and cessation, they are notions, and they too have to be thrown away. So these 16 breathing exercises, they are instruments, fine-tuned instruments. And when I used to restudy this sutra once every year, I have another go at it. And I'm always impressed, I was impressed this time by the surgical precision of this sutra. I was really, really astonished. So we have to be sure that we don't get caught in the fine-tuning of these last four instruments. And also not to be caught by the dharma as taught by our teachers. It's a big one. That too must be thrown away, so that we see enlightenment for ourselves, not because of what our teacher has said, or promised perhaps. Now, when it comes to letting go, I've had a limited success with this, and I do fall short of cessation. But I want to tell you a story that indicates some initial steps. I want to bring exercise 14 to your attention, letting go. It can be translated in two ways: letting go from the Sanskrit, or throwing away strongly from the Chinese. Now, letting go actually sounds a bit lame. This is for wimps and wussies. Whereas throwing away strongly means you're sort of standing in your own sovereignty and you are throwing away strongly. And I like the idea of throwing away strongly, but the example I'm going to give to you, a personal example, is much closer to that of reluctantly letting go. I used to have a wintergreen Subaru Outback, and I really loved this car. But I relinquished it quite a few years ago, and there was an initial period of grief and frustration. Every time a wintergreen Subaru Outback would go past me, I would weep, especially in the winter when I was climbing over big piles of snow to get on a bus. And I'd often get on the wrong bus and visit parts of this city I had no intention of visiting. And it would be nice to think I was relinquishing my car for environmental means, but that's not true. My car insurers refused to insure me because I had too many small crashes that had cost them oodles and oodles of money, and they just wouldn't insure me anymore. The most notorious incident was when I collided with my neighbor's minivan. I still believe to this day that he was on the wrong side of the road, but maybe it was me. And he's in this horrible little minivan, just crumpled. What the heck was it made of? And I just had a bent fender on my very robust and beautiful Subaru Outback. So my neighbor was very cheerful. He was also very large, so I'm glad he wasn't angry. He asked if I'd drive us both to the nearest police station to report the collision. And the policeman there said, "I don't want to hear anything from you. This is a no-fault collision." I was just about to tell him that that was an oxymoron, and my neighbor quickly shuffled me out before we got into any kind of trouble. But I also have to say that losing my car opened up totally new vistas, which was quite delightful. I learned that my city of Ottawa was well served with bus and light rail services. I even got to know where the number on the bus would take me. And also, coming back from my university to Baseline Station, if I had the car, I would have missed out on one of the most hilarious conversations I've ever had. I was coming back home, and there's a young man sitting across from me. He had a 12-pack of beer. He was obviously 3 sheets to the wind. And he kept staring at me, just like this, you know. And I was kind of, I was reading all the ads on the thing because I didn't want to meet his eyes or something. And he said, "Hey!" And he got my attention. He said, Are you the ecology guy on TV? I had a course on ecology and culture that was on cable TV. And I said, I demurred that indeed that was me. And then he totally floored me. He said, hey, me and the boys, we get together on a Monday night, we have a 12-pack and we're watching you and you're great. Then he started to tell me the stuff that he and the boys did. They were dumpster divers. They were very, very eco green and all the rest of it. And this young man eventually said, and you know what? When we go drinking in the woods, we bring the bottles out with us. And he was just a marvelous young man. And for a moment, I really didn't want to have a conversation with him, which would have been my loss. And he got off at a stop before mine, and he gave me a bottle of beer, which I gallantly accepted. I eventually put that in the driver's bus bin, but I just thought, wow, that was terrific. So this young man just brought home to me that, okay, you can't read a book by its outside cover. He had a heart of gold, and he was hilarious. But also from Baseline Station, there's a path down Pinecrest Creek, which is absolutely beautiful, especially in the winters, when you get a glossy white ice, and the trees are just so beautiful. And I would see lonely red foxes, owls, all kinds of things that I wouldn't see otherwise. And I'd always take stale bread with me to feed the ducks. And if I had a car, this wonder would have been denied to me. I also relocated essential necessities close to home, doctors, dentists, and things like that. They'd all been there all the time, only I didn't know. And I rearranged appointments so that people would meet me within bicycle and walking range. And I began to see, okay, this is all right being without a car. I'm really enjoying myself. This is when it started to feel less like letting go and feeling more like throwing away strongly, when I was getting all of these kinds of feelings. Now the bus drivers on the 117 bus route came to know me, and younger passengers would offer their seats to this greybeard with a jazzy umbrella and a funny black hat. Now, would I go back to driving a car and lose all this? Well, talk to me about an affordable, environmentally friendly Mercedes and a kind insurance broker, and perhaps we'll see. I'm only kidding. The fruits of letting go strongly, throwing away strongly, were gratefully tasted. Now, this particular teaching by the Buddha, he concludes it with these words. Bhikkhus, that's monks. Bhikkhus, this is how the practice of mindful breathing helps make our body and mind peaceful, helps us acquire positive investigations and reflections, makes our mind calm and pure, helps us have perceptions leading to wisdom, and brings our practice to completion. Now, in the brief commentary that I've drawn from for tonight, my intention is just to provide a taste of the depth of this particular teaching from the Buddha. There's so much else to it. And my practice of this exquisite training has been very lumpy over time, until I could truly see for myself that indeed my body, feelings and mind were calmer as a consequence of practicing it. And it takes me to a seemingly strange place where I see all of life as a movie. An illusion that I'm in but do not participate with. Well, not too much. So from deep in the cave of formless, I do my best to use mindfulness, concentration and insight to navigate the forms in everyday life and not get caught in those same forms. It's not always a success story. Finally, though you might be uplifted by the experience, if you ever meet the Buddha on the road, you must know what to do. You kill him. More precisely, you kill the perceptions and notions about the Buddha that you have become attached to. That's like throwing your teacher away. The raft is not the shore. Thank you for listening to me.